Okay, we're working on getting our backup recording going just in case. So please stand by. All good? Excellent. Thank you. Hey, Mr. Mays.
Good afternoon. Today is February 14th, 2023. We're here to conduct a budget hearing for the prosecutor's office and all funds associated with that. In regards to that, they have a general fund portion, a victim witness fund, 4D fund, a crime lab fund, and prosecutor's delinquent tax fund. I know Mr. Colson did a presentation early in 2022 about his requested needs and so forth, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Colson now.
Thank you, Mr. Matus. Commissioners, I appreciate you taking time to hold this budget hearing for this office. I'd like to spend a few minutes just to talk about my credentials, because I want you to be fully aware, and I want everybody to be fully aware just how long I have been involved in the criminal justice system in Lake County. So when I tell you some things, I want you to know it comes from 48 years of experience. It's been over 48 years since I started prosecuting in Lake County. I started as a young assistant prosecutor. I became the chief assistant prosecutor. I also represented the Board of County Commissioners at that time. Then after I left the prosecutor's office, I prosecuted for up to 5 different municipalities. Willowick, Willoughby Hills, Wade Hill, Kirtland. Something else is skipping my mind right at the moment. But my point is that I've been in the trenches for that long. I came back here as the elected prosecuting attorney over 28 years ago. And for 28 years, I have run this office. So I know what's involved in Lake County in the way of crime. I know what's necessary in the way to properly prosecute cases. And based upon this experience and what I am seeing, I actually want to sound a warning to you and to the county. Lake County, the crime in Lake County is changing, has changed in the last few years. If you watch the news, everybody realizes that crime in the United States is getting worse, it's getting more violent. You see that in the news every day. But I'm telling you that it's coming to Lake County, and we need to be prepared. I see the changes. Not only is crime up, but the violence is up. For instance, the possession by criminals of firearms is way up. Everybody has a firearm now. I'm talking about the criminals. I'm not talking about law-abiding citizens. The criminals. They're shooting them. They're firing willy-nilly throughout the county, at homes, at people's, at cars. Drugs is up. I mean, it is really up. When I first started as an assistant prosecutor, I was assigned to handle all of the cases in one court, all the felony cases, plus I handled every drug case in the county. So I knew what the drug problem was in Lake County back 48 years ago. And then I knew what it was when I came here 28 years ago. 28 years ago, I would say 50% of all crime is involved with drugs. Either possession, sale, stealing to get drugs, breaking to get drugs, murdering because of drugs. Now I am here to tell you it's over 90% of all crime is dealing with drugs. And what we have is some very violent people involved in drugs. I'm here to tell you that a couple weeks ago, a couple blocks from here, there was a Mexican cartel house being used. The violence that I'm seeing is also extending to younger people. It's amazing in juvenile court the degree of violence that has increased. I'm not going to give you a bunch of examples. But we had a car ring theft where they smash windows, break in, take the keys, and then start driving cars away from some of our dealers. One ringleader was 14 years old. She was a female, and she was hard as nails. We have gangs coming in from out of county in a car, dropping people off, running a neighborhood and stealing cars, breaking into garages, sometimes at gunpoint. So the crime is here. I'm sounding a warning. We have got to stop it. It is possible to stop if we have sufficient law enforcement. Also, when we get cases, they're much more complicated. Because of the violence, they're more complicated. Because of technology, they're much more complicated. We have now cell towers and cell phones, which take a lot of time to get the information, subpoena the information, analyze the information from cell towers location, to dump cell phones, to try to get what information we get from the cell phones. We have police officers now, more and more departments getting body cams. We might have as many as 10, 12 body cams for one incident with hours of video on all of them. We have video cameras in their cars. It's just the amount of work involved in preparing the case and reviewing everything is greatly increased because of this. And then another thing that we have to worry about is people no longer think law enforcement people are the good guys. I know, talking to the sheriff, he has trouble hiring deputies. I know, talking to the police chiefs, they have serious problems in trying to hire police officers. The number of people who want to be a police officer anymore, the numbers have greatly diminished because for some reason in our society, the police officers are not the good guys anymore. They're actually the bad guys in a majority of the minds out there. And that isn't just limited to the police officers. I know, Mayor, you even gave an example once where you used to have hundreds of people show up for apply for an exam, take a civil service exam when you're hiring police officers, and now if you can get a few dozen, you're really lucky if you can get that many. It's that way clear across the county. And it's also that way when it comes to prosecutors. I have been trying to hire prosecutors for over a year now, and I can't find competent candidates who are willing to work for the money. Funny, just by a week and a half ago, a young man, he's a freshman, beginning first-year law student at Case Western Reserve, called up our office because he wanted an internship in our office. He gets 4 hours credit for being an intern. And so we get 20 hours of work from him for how many weeks it is. I forget how many weeks it is. 9 weeks, I think. And he gets credit hours and we get some help. And first-year law students can't really do much, but it gives us a chance to look at somebody, and maybe someday, if we think he's good, we might want to hire him. But I had the chance to talk to him. I said, I can't. I've been advertising to hire attorneys out of law school. I used to, just a few years ago, and I know you've heard me say this before, a few years ago, I would put out applications just in Akron, University of Akron, Cleveland Marshall, at Case Western Reserve, sometimes Toledo. Just those law schools. I would get more resumes for people who wanted to be assistant prosecutors than I could really handle. We'd go through and we'd pick the best ones out and we'd interview the best ones. Now, just a few years later, I'm advertising in all 12 law schools in the state of Ohio. I'm also on Indeed and a few other places trying to find people who want to apply to become assistant prosecutors. And I can't get applications. I get a few in, but they're not really good ones. They're not ones I really want to interview. But I'm getting very, very few applicants. And so I asked this young student who's in his first year, and he says, nobody wants to be a prosecutor. They talk about it. They think the prosecutor is the bad guy. They want to, quote, go out and help people. Whatever that means. They want to help people. They don't want to be prosecutors. We, quote, his words, we, quote, hurt people, unquote. Well, what the prosecutor does is it protects society. The Supreme Court, who can, by the Constitution of the state of Ohio, who governs all lawyers and sets the rules, says the prosecutors are ministers of justice. We have to do what's right. We have to administer justice. And so we aggressively protect the innocent just as aggressively as we prosecute the guilty. We are the true public defenders. We are defending the public from the criminal. But that's not how the law students are seeing it. They're not applying. They don't want to be prosecutors. So the few, like this young man, the very few that want to be prosecutors, or all of the prosecutors' offices are in competition to get them because there are so few. And Cuyahoga County has recognized this early on, a little over a year ago. It might even not be that long. Cuyahoga County was starting right out of law school, prosecutors at $60,000 a year. Today, the last time I checked, and they've been raising it ever since, within this last year, they're up to $78,000 a year now. That's our competition. They're paying $78,000 a year. We just got ours up to $66,000, and I can't get any applications. I can't hire anybody. Cuyahoga County says that within 6 months, they'll be up to over $86,000 a year. Within 6 months. If they go into the civil division, they're going to start with no experience at $89,000 or higher. They've advertised one for over $100,000 for 3 years experience. 3 years experience as a lawyer for over $100,000. But my point is, Cuyahoga County, and then in the criminal, they go up quickly, up through the 90s, into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, up to where if you're in a major trial, you're getting $120,000 a year. You can even get more than that. And their chief assistants make $140,000 a year. But that's our competition. But a great number of my assistant prosecutors live in Cuyahoga County, and they watch this. And you know the problem I had last August when I came here. I told you that I was in desperate straits to raise the salaries because I was going to lose a substantial portion of my experienced prosecutors. They knew what Cuyahoga County is paying. I was paying $60,000 a year. They knew Cuyahoga County, they would start much higher than that. And they were ready to leave. They told me that. They didn't really want to, but they want careers as a prosecutor. They want to have salaries that will allow them to not get rich, but allow them to get married, allow them to have children, allow them to have children and send them to school, and all the other things that families want. And we were able to save it because the commissioners worked with me, you worked with me, Thank you. I was able to temporarily save them by giving them some raises and told them that the commissioners had promised you would talk to me later on. And this is now the time we're here to talk and decide what we're going to do. Save them. If you look at the handouts I gave you, before we go into the numbers, if you look at the second page, what I call Exhibit A, this is a career prosecutor program, pay schedules that I would like to try to introduce so that I can retain the experienced assistant prosecutors I have, and I can hire new people who will, that small pool that everybody's competing for, we can be competitive and we can hire. Because I have to tell you, when I hire an assistant prosecutor, I want the brightest and the best I can get. That's what you want. That's what the public wants. We're in trial against all kinds of experienced defense lawyers. We're in trial with some very experienced criminal lawyers from Cuyahoga County. We're right next to Cuyahoga County. We're right next to them. We need the experienced prosecutors. We need to keep them. We need to be able to attract them. And so what I would like to do is have different levels. As you can see, I put levels 1 through 5 on the second page, in which I wouldn't give everybody, this is what you could make. As your entry level, you would start at 75. You could start going up as you get more complicated cases. Once you have received enough training, you go into civil, you go into felony, you go into 4D, you would move up. You'd start at 75, you would move up then to around 85, 84. And as you could progress, as you became a lead assistant prosecutor, as you became a mentor, mentoring other prosecutors, or you become a division supervisor, you could have career goals. You could look at it and know, if I work hard, I can have a career. This is what I can do. And I will get more money if I do that. We've never had that before. We need that. We need it to keep it. Cuyahoga County has it. Other prosecutors' offices, like in Summit County, they have it. You can make a career out of being a prosecutor. What we don't want to do is hire an assistant prosecutor, train them to be a good trial lawyer, and then in 3 years, when they know they can go out and make more money in the private field, we don't want them to go out and leave. We want them to say, no, you're on the side of doing justice. We're doing good work here. It's important work. Now, I've been focusing on criminal, but civil is important too. Our civil staff has been depleted. One time I had 7 assistant prosecutors in the civil division. And it's not that the workload has gone down, that I now am down to 3. It's because I didn't have enough money to hire new prosecutors, so I took them from civil and I put them into criminal. Because the crime load was so heavy that we couldn't handle it. We've got to increase the civil division. We represent 53 different public entities in Lake County. And I'm not going to read them all to you, but from the Adams Board, Bee Collector, Microfilm Board, Probation Departments, Public Defender, that's our client, the judges, the Title Bureau, the utilities. We represent townships. So it's busy. We have a lot of work. We don't have enough people to do that. So I didn't want to just strictly focus on the criminal, but the criminal is what we see and what I'm worried about as far as the safety of the county and what we have done and we want to continue to do. And I'm here to tell you, I can't continue to do it without these raises. I can't continue to do this. We hold criminals accountable. When they are charged, we review the case very carefully. It's assigned to an assistant prosecutor. The chief assistant reviews it, assigns it to an assistant prosecutor who has the ability to handle that kind of a case. And they work that case from that moment. They start working it. They start interviewing all of the police officers, all of the important witnesses, looking at all of the evidence. This is even before we file an indictment, before we go to a grand jury. Why? Because we want to make sure we indict only those who are guilty. We want to make sure that we don't waste anybody's time getting bad indictments, waste the court time, waste our time. We want to protect the innocent. So they work the case, and they stay with that case. They go then and get an indictment, and once they get that indictment, it's a good one. We don't have to amend it. We don't have to change it because they've already practically prepared the case for trial, at least preliminarily. And then they will handle that case. We call it vertical prosecution. I started it when I got here. They will handle that case all the way through all of the pre-trials, through the trial, through any hearing, any motion. They will handle it because they become an expert on that case. It doesn't get switched to another prosecutor who has to relearn anything. Have to re-interview all the police officers, have to re-interview all the witnesses. That doesn't have to be done because we work that hard. It takes more time, it's hard, but it's the right way to do it. We do it the right way. And because we do it that way, then we're ready to go to trial. And when it comes time for the trial, in many counties, including the one I've been referring to here in Cuyahoga County quite often, the attorney who's going to try the case, getting the report, unless it's a major case, they have, if it's a major murder case or something, that's different. But if it's a standard run-of-the-mill case, they get the report shortly before trial and then they just try the case. Whether they like the indictment or not, they're stuck with it. They've got it. But what they do is they make a big deal. They make a plea bargain right away. They plea bargain. Because it took me a long time to train Cleveland attorneys because they thought that if you wait and you don't discuss the case and you don't try to get a plea offer until the day of trial, the prosecutor's not going to be ready and you can get your best deal. We don't work that way in Lake County. We give you an offer and we tell you this is the best offer you're ever going to get if we give an offer. This is when it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse. And if you get 2 weeks out from trial, you're going to plead the indictment. Forget about it. The officer got it. You're pleading to the indictment, or we're going to trial. And we go to trial. We're ready to go to trial. There are no giveaways. And that takes work. That takes dedicated prosecutors. But you know what it does? It does this, and I get reports from police officers all the time that say this. They arrest somebody. They don't know where they are when they're arrested. They don't know what jurisdiction. This happens a lot on the west side of the county, where they arrest somebody, and then they find out they're in Lake County, and they go, "Oh no, we're in Lake County." They don't like that because they know we're going to hold them accountable. They know that, and it's a deterrent to coming into Lake County to commit crimes. It's a deterrent. They're not going to get a slap on the wrist. And I don't want to knock Cuyahoga County on this, but they have, I don't know, 20,000 felonies a year. I don't know. We have 1,600 felonies a year. They have their own issues, their own problems, but I can tell you, I know what I'm talking about is most of the time they get a slap on the wrist and that's it. We don't do that. We hold them accountable. And so it helps deter it. And we have to continue to hold that line. And I am here to tell you, if I can't keep career prosecutors, if I can't hire prosecutors, good ones, if I can't hire the best and brightest, I cannot hold that line anymore. I'm to that point. You need to understand that. And I don't have any depth. I'm in a ready to go into a crisis mode right now. Starting next week, one of my felony assistant prosecutors goes on maternity leave. And shortly thereafter, I have 3 more going on maternity leave. They're entitled to 12 weeks each. I'm losing 4 prosecutors, experienced prosecutors. Well, one of them's still in juvenile. 3 experienced, one of them's in juvenile. Prosecutors for maternity, 12 weeks. We don't know what we're going to do. We're going to have trouble. We can get through it in short term. We can get through it for this 12 weeks. But we did it last fall, where we had 3 out on maternity leave. And I kept telling them, things are going to get better, things are going to get better. And so we made it through. And everybody worked harder at night. They worked more on weekends, because they do work nights, they do work weekends. This is not an 8 to 4:30 job by any stretch of the imagination. I told them it was going to get better. And now here we are. I'm going to lose 4 more for 12 weeks. And so they're going to have to buckle up, double up again, and work harder. And there's a toll for that on them. You know, they'll do it for a short term. They're not going to do it, not for long term, not when they don't have that kind of pressure if they go to another prosecutor's office. In the last 2 years, I lost 6 assistant prosecutors. 5 of them went to other government agencies, got paid a lot more. So no matter how much they may like working here, money talks. So we'll make it through, but I don't know. It's not going to be easy next 12 weeks. It's going to be really tough. And I just had another prosecutor tell me that they're pregnant, but they aren't leaving until August. Some breathing room there. But my point is, you can't have just exactly enough prosecutors, because people get sick, people go on vacation, people get pregnant. And it's not just the women who take maternity leave. In fact, 2 of those 4 I told you about are men. They're entitled to it. So we need to be able to hire. We just need it. I think that if we can raise the salaries to those figures that I've given you in the career prosecutor program, where we start at 75, once you get trained, you're going to move up to 85, and then as you get more experienced, as we give you more cases, once you become good enough to be first chair on a murder case, a rape case, a child molestation case.
You're off mic.
I'm sorry, I'm a wanderer.
In that top drawer, there's a mobile microphone if you want to use that.
That's all right. As you get promoted to first chair, and you're doing these complicated cases, you should be compensated for that. Other prosecutors' offices do, and we need to. For instance, if you are doing major trials in Cuyahoga County, you're making almost $98,000 a year. if you become part of the major trial with H, whatever H stands for, I don't know, that's one of their categories, you'd be making $115,000 a year, or up to $120,000 a year. Now, I'm not asking for those kind of figures, but I am asking for a substantial increase so that we can be competitive. Where we start at 75, when you get trained, you move to 85. You become a lead, you get to 95,000. Now, I wouldn't give all of this money at once, mind you. I'm not going to do that. That's why if you see that colored chart, the one that's in color, it's going to be, I'll do it gradual. So it won't be a hit like all at once, but as you graduate, so they can see you work hard and you get promoted and we can trust you with more cases. Then when you become a mentor, this is where you're really doing the hard work, you're training, at the same time you're handling a full caseload. We don't have the ability, we don't have the staff to have just trainers. You've got to carry your full caseload and train at the same time. And those people should be recognized and say, okay, we're going to pay you extra because you're doing that extra. You're going to be working later at night. You're going to be working more weekends because you're doing that. And you know, the people I have now are dedicated. I'm lucky. I've been in this office now for over 28 years, and right now I have the best group of assistant prosecutors I've ever had. I've had a lot of talented ones in the past, but if you take the conglomerate group, this is the best group I've ever had, and I really, Lake County needs to keep them, and they need to be rewarded for it. So what does that mean as far as salaries goes? That means to raise them to competitive rates right now for 2023, and I've given you an exact list. I need a total of $393,800. Let's just round it off to 390. I'm going to use round figures. $394,000 additional to what has been appropriated in the temporary budget of $2.8 million. So that's an additional $400,000 practically there. But I need an additional $60,000 budgeted. It may not be spent. Certainly all of it probably won't be spent. But that at $60,000 is so that I have the money there when they do move. Let's say if they move from juvenile to felony, I can give them that raise. Or when I have somebody who's gone from a lead attorney and I move them up to as a mentor, I can, that extra $60,000 would be there. I'd have that available. All of it wouldn't be spent, but I need to know that I have it there, and that would then mean that I would need an additional $454,000 to the temporary appropriation. Now, I need additional staffing for a couple reasons, and I gave you a list. It's on, if I can find it here, Exhibit D. You, over a year ago, approved my hiring another assistant prosecutor and a legal secretary. I have not been able to fill it because I'm not getting any applicants. If I fulfill those positions, then I will need at that time, and the way Mr. Matus has explained that it works, and I think it's worked that way, that when I hire them, then you will give me the money. But when I talked over a year ago, I said, the civil attorney, I wanted $70,000. That isn't going to do it. I'm not going to get anybody of any competence for $70,000, especially in civil. So I put down $103,000.
Question, sir. I thought it was 2 attorneys back in the day.
Well, I hired one just recently.
Okay.
I just recently hired one. She used to work for me.
Okay.
She worked for me, and then when COVID came, you told me to reduce my budget by 10% a year.
Yes.
I did. I had to lay her off.
Okay.
I laid her off. I didn't want to, but I did. But she became available, so I just recently hired her back.
Got it. Okay. So there were two. You
There
hired
were two,
one.
now we're
There's
down to
still
one.
Outstanding.
Still one outstanding.
Thank you.
And then a legal secretary I have not hired yet either. Now, those have already been approved by you. And I just wanted you, but I want you to be aware, if I hire them, then that's going to increase the money I'm going to need. Obviously, I'm not giving you prorated figures. Everything's prorated over the year. Now, I do need another criminal prosecutor. We need the depth that I was talking about. So that would be an additional $75,000. And I need a couple more. I need, we have, don't let me forget about talking about public records. We have so much evidence now that has to be processed. It's phenomenal. Years ago, you might have some photographs, or you might have some laboratory reports, and then it's all witness statements, and that's about what you had. We now have so much video from all sources, not just from police from car cams, from body cams, from the FLIR, from your traffic light cams, from security cameras, from doorbell cameras. We have so much evidence that has to be processed and analyzed and reviewed now. It takes a substantial part of the assistant prosecutor's time to do that. Now, they all have to look at it before they go to trial, but it will cut down on time if we have somebody who can organize that. And we're going to call it an evidence media specialist. The media meaning whether it's TV, sound recordings, whatever it might be, cell phone tire. Organize it. Now, remember, everything we get, we have to prepare and give to defense counsel. I've done this my entire career. I've always had open discovery. Everything we have in our file, everything, it's open file, we give to defense counsel. And recently, last 10 years, even the Supreme Court has said, we're going to change the civil rules, the criminal rules, and now by rule we have to do it. But we did it all the time. But it takes an enormous amount of time. But it's justice. That's what we're here for. We're here for justice. We're not here for surprise. We're here for justice. And if we give everything to defense counsel, which we have to, then it makes everybody's job easier and there's no surprises. We get to justice. But that takes a lot of work. What we do now for discovery, it got so we can no longer give out discovery. There's just too much. So we put it on our server and we give passwords to defense counsel and they come in and they pull it down themselves. But to get it on that server is a fantastically difficult, time-consuming job. I have an IT person who helps. We have our investigators who help, but we need more help in that area. We're going to need it. I also would like to get a civil paralegal. Split half the cost with DTAC. That's why it's only $28,000. We collect delinquent taxes. The treasurer sells out tax certificates to companies who buy the taxes, but they pick and choose and take the good ones. And the other ones are sent to us that they don't want to buy. And so there's a lot of work. But we raise, we're collecting over $1 million a year every year. I think this year, last year was a 1.6 million, was it, Dave? 1.6 million that we collected in delinquent taxes that our office brought in. Some years it's much higher, some years it's a little lower, but it's certainly well over 1 million years average we're bringing in through delinquent tax. So that helps the county. That helps the county. That's what we're doing. And I would like to start going back to, we quit having law clerks because we didn't have any money to pay them. And I tried to see if we can get volunteer law clerks just for the experience, and it didn't work out. It just didn't work out. But it's kind of like a farm team, law clerks. You hire a law clerk, and you pay them $20 an hour. They work 20 hours a week. And they help you out, especially if they're second. The first years don't help you that much, but they're learning. Second and third years, they can help you a lot. They can do research, write memos, and we get to see how good they are. And if they're really good, then we say, hey, how would you like a job? How would you like to stay here? It's a farm club. And we haven't been able to do that for years. We haven't done that since somewhere for 15 years. And we really need to try to get back to that if we can. So that's, we've already previously approved the 2 positions, but I'd like you to really consider the other ones. They're necessary to give us a depth in our criminal prosecutions. They're necessary to remove some work so we don't need to hire another lawyer. And instead of asking for 2 more assistant criminal, I'm asking for 1 and see if we can't do that. That would be an increase of $349,000. Now, prorated, obviously. You hire them in week 16, then it's prorated. I'm just giving you what it would be for a full year. Also, we have an over-reliance on the crime lab in the prosecutor's office. And I've given you the exact figures on Exhibit E.
When you say over-reliance, a financial over-reliance?
Yes. In taking crime lab, taking the levy monies. And I want to talk about that for a minute, especially since we're changing things with the crime lab and the investigators in our office. And so right now, I'm going to give you ballpark figures because I haven't looked at them in a month or 2, but they're fairly accurate. Right now, all of the salaries of the crime lab, all of the scientists, all of the administration, all of the secretaries at the crime lab, their salaries are about $800,000 a year. We are taking an additional $500,000, $500,000, and paying for salaries in the prosecutor's office. Now, that's because I'm the director of the crime lab. Dave's the assistant director. We do a lot of work for the crime lab. Our administration does work for the crime lab. So a lot of that money is just fine, but we have investigators who are 100% on the crime lab and are really doing very little, if anything, for the crime lab. In fact, 86% of all of the investigator salaries are paid by the crime lab. That's troublesome because they aren't doing that amount of work for the crime lab. The people voted for the crime lab levy, so that money would keep the crime lab going and healthy And I promised him that I would husband the money, and I would, as long as I'm here, I would make that levy last at least 15 years, if not longer. I was able to make the last one last, I think, for 18 years. And with good management, that can be done. But we have to husband the money, and and the voters wanted that money to go to the crime lab. Now, the crime lab no longer is accredited to go to crime scenes. We used to go to crime scenes, but we don't have the money to do that anymore properly. It would have been terribly expensive. When I went out for the last levy, I asked for a larger levy because I knew what it would take in order to maintain our credibility, our accreditation, our international accreditation, the highest accreditation you can get for a crime lab. We have it. I knew in order to get that, in order to get it for the go to crime scenes, it would take hiring and training of additional people, and it would be a substantial sum. When we finally got an agreement that we would go for the 4 mil levy instead of the 5 mil, I knew we couldn't continue to be accredited for crime scenes. That doesn't mean we don't help the police. That doesn't mean we don't go to the crime scenes to collect evidence. But we no longer could take charge of a crime scene, so our number of crime scenes that we go to are down. And our investigators used to go to the crime scene. And we had a 360 camera. A 360 camera is a camera that will take a picture 360 degrees in the computer software. It measures distance. It's all infrared and lasers. It measures distances, and it can recreate in the computer a 3D crime scene. Very important evidence. From that, you can even do trajectories of where the bullets flew and all kinds of things that you can do. And you can, in 3D, walk through the crime scene. Now, we have one of those cameras. It's getting old. It needs to be replaced. But it's very expensive. So the sheriff has agreed, and when I was at the crime lab, we have agreed we're going to buy a new one and we're going to share the cost. We're going to share the cost. But that means my investigators then are not going to be as involved in going to crime scenes, and so therefore not as involved in doing the crime lab work. And so I would like to reduce the over-reliance on the crime lab levy funds by $98,000. I think you can see that would then put in keeping with the investigators. Now, one thing I'm looking at the chart and I can't even find what I'm looking for. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to be using crime lab levy funds for the investigators. I am. But we're going to reduce it from 100% down to 50%, or 75% through 35%. So we would be reducing it. I think that would be more in keeping with the spirit of the crime lab levy funds, and I would like to do that in this budget. At least I'm requesting you to consider that. Now, another thing that I wanted to point out that we may need additional help with, and that is public records requests. The burden on our office for public records requests, Mr. Massey, I just said that as a joke.
It's okay, I pull his leg all the time too, so you pull the other one so you can walk in a straight line.
That's just a joke, because we get them from all over the place. Sometimes, like we just got a public records request on one of our capital cases, and these big plastic boxes. Were there 9 of them?
Yes.
9 of them, filled with reports and files and photographs and evidence. You know, and when you get a public records request, it's just not, oh, we're going to take that, copy it, and send it to them. We have to take it, go through it, redact what has to be redacted. We have to redact uncharged suspects. We have to redact social security numbers. We have to redact medical information, all kinds of things we have to redact. So it takes a trained person to know what they're doing to redact it. Then we have to copy it. Then we have to send it out. And we get those. Do you have an idea how many we're getting?
Chuck, I can't keep, Mr. Colson, I can't keep track. I can say this, I've been in this division for 8 years now. I would say the last 4 years, it's increased exponentially. And not only do we get public records requests from our office, we get them from all the other county offices too, and appropriately provide assistance on those and deal with them.
So it's becoming a manpower burden, and that if I could use maybe this media, I even forgot what I called him now, evidence media person.
Evidence and media
Specialist, that would help with that substantially. So that's another reason why I would like that person. All totaled, what I'm asking for is an additional 890, let's say 898, I'm rounding it off, $898,000 for the 2023 budget. I understand prorated. But if everybody were on board January 1 through the end of the year, and nobody left, that's what it would be. That would mean I'm asking for a total appropriation for the prosecutor's office for 2023 of $3,698,000. That includes the reduction, approximately $98,000 reduction in crime lab funds that I'm asking for. I may have left a number of things out. But they're not coming to me right now. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Commissioner Pleshnik, Commissioner Regovich, gentlemen?
Chuck, how many employees do you have now in the prosecutor's office?
The total number of employees, if you count the crime lab, is I think 86. That includes the scientists, the investigators, the victims' advocates, the attorneys, the secretaries, administrative staff. Which reminds me, did you know, when we talk about secretaries, that we're the secretaries for the judges, our office? Did you know that we prepare every journal entry for the judges? That is every sentencing journal entry, every conviction journal entry. We prepare all of those for the judges. So our office is busy. Okay, I'm sorry. That made me think of that.
But also, you said you had about 1,600 felony cases a year?
Correct.
How many civil?
Well, civil cases, very few when you deal with cases.
Civil work, I know what we sent to you alone.
Yeah, but the work involved, civil is mostly sitting down and talking to the people, and who they want to get legal advice. Can they do this? Can they not do that? It's not really cases.
But
like
you mentioned how many entities like you provide that?
53 different entities.
53.
By statute, I have to represent. Any of these 53 entities come to me, I have to do their work. Not all of them come to me all the time. Some of them have not come to me. Some of the townships haven't come to me in a while. But if they come to me, I have to do the work. I can't say no.
I know what we send out to you. It's quite a bit.
Quite a bit.
Every week.
I can tell you, if I didn't have such a hardworking, dedicated civil staff, I don't know how, quite frankly, Dave handles the civil work, just 3 people.
That's why he's got a bad back carrying all that.
And I tell you what, I'm worried. I'm worried because I might lose one of my experienced civil attorneys very quickly. I don't know.
Yeah.
He hopes to leave. We'll see what the governor has to say.
Thank you, Chuck.
So just to be clear, no decisions will be made until all budget meetings or budget hearings are completed. Just a quick scan of this, though, although we're looking at your ask of an additional $898,000 realistically by the time we factor in medical, PERS, that type of stuff. Now we're looking at 1 to 1.2 million. Again, that's one of the reasons why we have to digest all of this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is your ask, but then there's other numbers behind that.
Yeah, that's correct. And I just assumed
It's
that was an
okay.
assumption. You're absolutely correct.
But as we said, these budget hearings are going to be the most open, transparent in the history of Lake County, which is why we're making this concerted effort. I know these the sort of things that usually just take place at the budget finance director level, but it's worth saying here and now for all to see and hear. So I just wanted to get that out. But thank you, sir.
Just as your legal counsel, though, you said you're not going to make any decisions at all budget, and I understand that. That only makes sense. Just make sure that I strong recommend you do that in public too, when you do make it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, well, we are coming up on the witching hour here, so
Mr. Plesnik, do you have any more questions?
Mr. Colson, I would just say, as we're reviewing your request, it would be helpful if you could repeat, and you had shared this insight with me earlier, as we're looking at the additional positions, could you give us a sense of your priority if you were to say your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, what is the most significant to your office so that we have that as a guide?
Okay, yes, sir. The most important is the new civil attorney. The second appointment is important is a new criminal attorney, an additional criminal attorney, and then the legal secretary. One would be third. Those would be the top 3. Mm-hmm. Then after that would be the evidence media specialist.
And this would be the individual who would assist with reviewing the body cams, uploading them for evidence, etc.
That's correct. Organizing all the cell tower information. You can't believe how complicated that can be. You can get, they can be reports. When you ask for cell tower information, you might get on 8.5 by 11 paper that thick of nothing but just numbers. And, I mean, the time involved in that is immense. Yes.
okay. Mr. Matus? All right. Prosecutor Colson, thank you for joining us today. Again, no decisions will be made until all budget meetings are completed. Thank you.